Can you hear them? The dreadful screams.
I moved into my new apartment building about 6 months ago. It was brand new, modern glass front, brushed steel doors, and the faint smell of paint still lingering in the halls. Everything felt too clean, too untouched. I'd been saving up for years to finally move out of my parents' place, and when this high-rise opened up downtown with move-in specials, I jumped at it. 14 floors, security guard in the lobby, 2 shiny elevators, and a rooftop terrace. It felt like the perfect place to start over. My unit was on the 14th floor, top level. I thought it was cool being that high up. You could see the whole city glowing at night. The elevator ride was smooth, completely silent except for the soft hum of the machinery. For the first couple of weeks, I didn't notice anything strange. The neighbors were quiet, the hallways always empty. It felt isolated but peaceful. Then small things started happening. Sometimes when I'd call the elevator, the doors would open but no one would be inside, even though I could swear I heard footsteps leaving seconds before. Other times the elevator would take longer than usual to arrive, as if it stopped somewhere in between. But I'd check the floor display, and it would skip from the lobby straight to 14 without stopping. I brushed it off as normal mechanical quirks. Then one night around 11:30 I came home from a late shift. The lobby was empty except for the security guard asleep behind his desk. The lights in the hall flickered every few seconds. I pressed the elevator button. The right one opened immediately. When I stepped inside, the floor display lit up in that soft orange glow. I pressed 14. The doors shut quietly and the elevator started moving. Only it didn't sound right. The usual hum was replaced by this faint grinding noise, like metal scraping against itself far below. The lights flickered, and the floor counter ticked up 3, 5, 8, 11, 13. Then it skipped 14. It didn't stop. The elevator jerked slightly, then came to a sudden halt. The screen read 15, but the building only had 14 floors. The doors slid open with a soft ding, and what I saw didn't make sense. The hallway outside was dim, walls discolored, lights buzzing overhead. The carpet looked old and stained, the kind you'd see in a hotel that hadn't been cleaned in decades. I stepped out cautiously, thinking maybe it was a maintenance floor, but there was no 15 sign anywhere. The elevator doors closed behind me, and that familiar metallic silence filled the air. Something about the hallway felt wrong. The air smelled stale, almost like mold, and the hum of the building was gone. No ventilation, no distant city noise, just silence. I walked a few feet forward. My shoes made soft squishing sounds on the carpet, which was damp for some reason. There were apartment doors on either side, but every one of them looked old, faded paint, numbers barely visible. Then, at the far end of the hall, I saw movement. A person, or at least what looked like one, standing completely still near the last door. They weren't facing me, just standing sideways, their head tilted, slightly toward the ceiling. I froze. The hall light above them flickered once, twice, and then the entire corridor went dark. I spun around and ran back to the elevator, slamming the up button repeatedly. Nothing. When the lights flickered back on, the hallway was empty. Whoever, or whatever that was, it was gone. The elevator finally chimed, doors sliding open. I jumped inside and hit 14 again, praying it would actually work this time. As it started moving, I exhaled, gripping the railing. The floor display went 14, 13, 12, 11, then stopped, and the lights went out completely. I stood there, surrounded by darkness, the sound of the elevator cables creaking above me. At first, I thought it was a blackout, but the emergency light in the corner should have come on. It didn't. Then the air inside the elevator changed. It felt heavier, colder. My phone flashlight barely pierced the dark, but I noticed something strange on the panel. All the floor numbers were unlit, except for one. A button labeled B, for basement, was glowing faintly red. I hadn't pressed. The elevator jerked suddenly, and before I could react, it began to move down. Slowly at first, then faster. The sound was deafening, metal screaming as it descended. I hit the emergency stop, the alarm button, everything. Nothing worked. Then, it stopped. The doors opened halfway, revealing a hallway that looked like the one from before, but worse. The walls were cracked, black stains spreading out like veins. The lights flickered, barely functional, and a steady dripping sound echoed somewhere far away. I should have stayed inside. I know that now. But panic makes you do stupid things. I squeezed through the doors and stepped out. The floor was sticky, the air damp and reeking of rust and mildew. I saw an exit sign flickering at the end of the hall and started walking toward it, thinking maybe it led to stairs. Halfway down the hall, I heard something behind me, a dragging sound. Slow. Wet. I turned around, shining my phone's flashlight. Back down the corridor, nothing there. The sound stopped. Then, a door creaked open, not fully, just an inch or two. Enough to see the darkness beyond it. Something about that tiny gap made every instinct in my body scream to run. And then softly, I heard breathing. Not mine. Not human. Deep, rasping, wet breaths coming from behind that door. I started backing, up step by step, when a hand reached out through the gap. Long fingers, pale skin, twitching like it hadn't been used in years. I ran. The exit sign led nowhere, just a dead-end wall with a painted-over door. I spun around, heart racing, and sprinted back toward the elevator. The doors were still open, thank God. I dove inside and hit the close button repeatedly. The doors began to slide shut, slowly, painfully slowly, when something slammed into them from the outside. A thud so hard the entire elevator shook. Through the narrowing gap, I saw a face, gray, expressionless, eyes black like holes. It opened its mouth, and this low, choking sound filled the air like a gurgle mixed with a growl. The doors finally closed, cutting it off. I hit the lobby button again and again until the elevator jolted upward. It rose for what felt like minutes, the floor numbers flickering erratically. Finally, the doors opened, and I was back on 14. But something was off. The hallway was clean again. Fresh paint, bright lights. My door was there. Everything looked normal. Except the security camera above the elevator was pointing directly at me. It wasn't supposed to move. That night I barely slept. Every sound in the apartment made me flinch. The hum of the fridge, the creak of the floorboards. In the morning, I went straight to the lobby and asked the security guard if there'd been any power issues the night before. He just blinked at me, confused. No, sir, everything's been running fine. I told him what happened, how the elevator skipped 14, stopped on a floor that shouldn't exist, the weird hallway, the person. He frowned and turned toward the monitors behind him. Which elevator? The right one. He rewound the footage to around 11:45 p.m. When I got home, I watched myself walk through the front door, press the button, step into the elevator. The doors closed, then static, about 10 seconds of it. When the image returned, the doors opened again and I walked out, pale, shaking, eyes wide open. The guard looked at me. "You never went anywhere, man. The elevator didn't move." I didn't believe him, so he printed the timestamp footage for me. Sure enough, no movement between floors. The counter stayed on 14 the whole time. But here's the part that made me sick. Right before the footage cut to static, there was a single frame, just one, that showed someone else inside the elevator with me, a tall figure standing in the corner, barely visible. I froze, staring at it. The guard must have noticed my face because he leaned in closer. "What? You see something?" I couldn't answer. I just nodded slowly. He frowned, squinting at the monitor, and then laughed nervously. Probably just a reflection. These new cameras glitch sometimes. But when I looked closer, the figure's head was turned toward the camera. That night, I decided I couldn't stay there anymore. I packed what I could and booked a motel across town. Before I left, though, I had to take the elevator one last time. It opened to an empty cab, quiet and still. I hesitated, then stepped inside and pressed lobby. The doors closed. The floor display lit up. 14. Then it stopped again. The lights flickered, and the doors opened, to that same dark hallway. Only this time there were footprints on the carpet, wet ones, leading directly toward me. I work nights as a janitor in a downtown office tower. It's one of those glass and steel corporate buildings that look impressive in the day but completely dead at night. Most people don't think about how those places stay clean. But that's me pushing a mop around empty hallways from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. It's easy money. Quiet. Boring most nights. The only unsettling part is how silent it gets after midnight. No footsteps, no office chatter, just the low hum of ventilation and my mop bucket squeaking over tile floors. There are 3 elevators in the building. After 1 a.m., only one of them, elevator 2, stays operational for staff access. The others lock automatically when the maintenance system runs. One Thursday night, I was finishing up on the 18th floor when I noticed the elevator display flickering. The digital numbers glitched for a second, then froze between B2 and B3. That was strange because I'd worked in the building for 6 years. There's only 2 basements, B1 and B2. I ignored it at first, but when I got inside the elevator, the panel light for B3 was glowing faintly red, like it was active. I figured maybe it was a software update or a glitch. The ride down was normal. Soft mechanical hum, faint whir of cables. I was heading to the lobby to clock out, but before I reached it, the elevator stopped on its own. The floor display read B3. A quiet ding, the doors opened to darkness. Froze, no lights. Just the faint reflection of my flashlight in the stainless steel doors. The building never had a B3. I knew the layout. It was in the blueprints framed in the janitor's office. 2 basements. That's it. But the air coming from that dark hallway smelled real, stale, humid, like old concrete. I leaned out slightly and saw a long corridor stretching into blackness. My radio hissed for a second with static. Then a sound, faint but distinct. Someone walking. Slow, deliberate footsteps echoing down that hall. I stepped back into the elevator and hit lobby repeatedly. Nothing happened. The doors didn't close. The footsteps grew louder. That's when I noticed the light above the elevator flickering. Not the white fluorescent kind, but a dim orange hue, like a construction site emergency light. And then, the smell, like burned rubber or melted plastic. I hit the close door button again. Still nothing. I don't know why, but I yelled out, "Hello?" No answer, just a soft sound, like something dragging across the floor, and then a faint knock on the metal frame of the elevator door. 3 slow taps. Tap, tap, tap. I backed into the corner. The elevator dinged suddenly, doors sliding shut, and it began to rise again. I exhaled, shaking. When it stopped, the doors opened to the lobby. Bright lights. Silence. The front desk was empty. But when I looked back, I realized something was smeared on the inside of the elevator door. 3 small black handprints. The next day, I came in early to talk to the building's night supervisor, Mark. He was a retired electrician, worked maintenance for 20 years before taking that job. I told him what happened. The floor reading B3, the footsteps, the smell. He frowned. "There's no B3, man. Maybe the system glitched. Those elevators are old." Still, he looked curious. We both went to check the control room in the basement, where the master panel displays all elevator movement logs, and sure enough, between 2:16 and 2:19 a.m., elevator 2 registered a stop at B3. Mark stared at it. That shouldn't be possible. He opened an old maintenance cabinet, flipping through dusty floor plans. There was nothing marked below B2. But on one of the oldest blueprints, yellowed and brittle, I noticed faint pencil writing under the page margin. It said, Sub-Basement 3, Storage, Maintenance Access, Condemned 1998. Mark went quiet for a long time. I was here back then, he finally said. There was a fire during construction. 3 workers got trapped down there. They sealed the whole level after that. He looked at me, face pale. You didn't go down there, did you? I didn't answer. That night, I thought about calling. In sick, but curiosity got the better of me. At around 12:30 a.m., I made my way to the basement again. Everything was quiet. I stood in front of elevator 2, staring at the button panel. The B3 light wasn't on anymore, but when I pressed B1, the elevator started moving down on its own. It passed B1, then B2, and just kept going. The sound of cables straining filled the shaft. Then a deep thud. The doors opened, the same corridor from before. Only this time, the emergency light was flickering red. I stepped out, flashlight shaking in my hand. The air was thick, damp, full of dust. There were pipes running along the ceiling, some dripping condensation. At the end of the hall, I saw something, a shape on the ground. As I got closer, I realized it was an old maintenance helmet, blackened from heat. Next to it, melted plastic, warped tools, and a name tag half burned away, the only legible word, Rivera. I turned to leave, but the elevator doors were closed, and the panel beside them, it was dead. No buttons, no lights. The only sound was my own breathing, and something faint. A voice. It was coming from down the corridor, echoing softly. A man's voice, whispering something I couldn't understand. Then another joined it, and another. Low, hoarse, overlapping murmurs, like several people whispering at once. My flashlight flickered, and for a split second I saw movement, shapes, figures standing just beyond the range of the light, motionless. When I turned the beam toward them, they were gone. Then a burst of static came from my radio, followed by a voice. You shouldn't be here, it wasn't Mark. The radio went silent. I froze, staring down the hallway. Then the emergency lights went out, pitch black. I started running back toward where I thought the elevator was, feeling along the walls. My boots splashed through puddles, echoing in the dark. I hit metal, the elevator doors. I started pounding on them. No sound from the other side. Then, somewhere behind me, a slow, rhythmic clanging, like someone dragging a metal pipe against the wall, getting closer. I fumbled with my flashlight until it flickered back on, and what I saw nearly stopped my heart. Down the corridor, 3 shapes stood shoulder to shoulder, charred, distorted, silhouettes. Their heads tilted, their skin cracked and blackened, smoke rising faintly from their clothes. They weren't walking, they were gliding. I slammed both fists against the elevator door. Open! Open! The metal creaked. Then, with a sudden jolt, the doors slid open. I dove inside, hit the lobby button, and didn't look back. The doors closed and the elevator started to rise, violently shaking, lights flickering, through the small gap between the doors. I saw something. One of those burnt hands pressing against the outer frame as it disappeared upward, then darkness again. When the doors opened, I stumbled into the lobby. The guard at the desk jumped up. Hey, what the hell happened to you? I was covered in dust and grime, breathing like I'd run a marathon. He helped me sit, called Mark on the radio. When Mark arrived, I begged him to check the basement. He did, and came back 10 minutes later, pale as death. There's nothing there, he said quietly. No B3. The elevator shaft ends at B2. I thought he was lying, until he showed me the live feed from the basement security cameras. He rewound the footage to the time I'd entered the elevator. I watched myself go in. The doors closed. Then, nothing. The elevator never moved. But right before the feed glitched, 3 dark figures appeared standing behind me inside the elevator. Quit that job the next morning. They can clean their own damn floors now.